Welcome back to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today we're talking with Spence Stehno. He is president of the Benjamin F. Goss Bird Club in the Waukesha area and a longtime birder. So we're super excited to be talking with you today, Spence. He's also got a great beard going on. So how are things going?
Well, with less fertilizer, it probably wouldn't have grown as good, but it's been a good year for crops.
That's good. So, Spence, you've been birding for a long time. Can you take us back to the beginning and tell us how you got started in this hobby?
Well, it was like this in the old days. Uh, I was teaching at Waukesha in biology, and I lived over at Lake Kesis in a cabin, eating with wood over there. And the neighbors had a bird feeder out there with a big platform. And all of a sudden, all these weird little contraptions started flying in, and I just started getting interested as to what was there. So after watching this for a while, I saw a class come up on a Saturday at WCTC out there, and this gal Linda was teaching it, and she was a member of the Ben Goss Bird Club and introduced me to some people over there. And the rest became history after that. Uh, the hard part is that even though my interest in birds started at that time, and I tried to participate uh, in that time frame, after several uh, well 8 years, I left teaching and went to work out in Boston, and then I came back. I had a family at that time, but we went different directions, and my workload increased tremendously. So I had just superficial birding for a number of years. It wasn't until I retired back around 2010, 28 that the avid birding started, and it was an interesting period because uh, in comparing it now these days, uh, your brother Ryan is what I call a photo birder in a certain sense. Uh, I am a I am a binoculars and a telescope person, and I just never took up the technology, and it went from just film and focusing and trying to make slides and pictures out of that, and it went into digital. And when digital struck, it seemed that birding took a whole new pathway. Similar, this device for keeping up with birds called the application eBird came along, and all of a sudden there was a new way of keeping up besides a handwritten list and putting it on a printed card for the species of the state. Uh, there was nothing wrong with birding like that, but it it was in certain ways uh, a little bit more adventurous, timely. Uh, it took some more skills at times. We didn't have Merlin telling you that uh, that's a downy woodpecker over there. You had to figure it out and work your way around. So uh, these things have helped me tremendously. But as one of those famous plays said, I'm most grateful for the kindness of strangers like yourselves and other people who shared tidbits and pointed out birds and given me information about what the bird looks like, how it sounds, what it's doing. And sometimes I actually retain some of that information.
It's funny because we started birding very seriously only a few years, it sounds like, after you started kind of getting back into it after you retired. And I don't actually remember when the first time was that we met you, but it just feels like we had always known you from the start for some reason. So I was trying to think like, oh yeah, we met each other at this place, and I can't recollect when it was. Can you, Derek?
One of them was Fort Washington.
I remember that in the winter time.
Yes. And I would be calling you and your friend's name
girlfriend
at
at the
that
time,
time.
Bree. Yeah.
And, you, and it worked.
I remember too, because it was always stuff we hadn't seen. So it would be like, oh, there's a canvas back here. And we were like, what? Where? How? How was it there all along? So we actually, and we're from the same county. So you kind of took us under your wing. And whenever we'd see you, you'd point stuff out to us. And I feel like we made a good team because we used the technology and you used the binoculars. So it was a good thing going.
What's our most famous find with Ryan?
Probably the golden eagle on the Christmas bird count, I think.
I know that was end of the day over by McWanago in the subdivision, and a bird's going by, and we both jump out of the car, and I'm trying to guess, and I'm saying, maybe it's a rough leg hawk, and you're clicking away, and well, that's how we threw it on the label. And then you got to share the photo online with an expert birder, and they said, well, lo and behold, you guys got a golden eagle.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was my first Christmas bird count ever too. So it was cool to be out all day, starting to look for the owls in the morning and then going through everything. And
We
then
scripted it that way.
yeah, then we were the last ones left birding. I think everybody else decided to leave. And there's that old saying, bird every bird. And you see something soaring up, you think it's bald eagle, red-tailed hawk, maybe if you're lucky, a rough-legged, but a golden eagle, which for our county is a very good find. And we actually had another good find too, Townsend solitaire in a random marsh, basically, a boggy marsh in springtime.
Was that the one over there at Wilton Road?
Yeah, the one that was at that random lot when we got a group of birders out together.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Bill Grossmeyer was there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Got
was
some famous finds.
Yeah, we're not too bad at it sometimes.
No, absolutely not.
So Spence, tell us a little bit more about the Goss Bird Club and what you guys have been working on.
Well, the club itself is named after Benjamin F. Goss, who was not only a birder, but a scientist in the way that he collected birds and eggs, and has a huge collection that he ended up having passed along to the Bird Club, and then it was shared with the Milwaukee Public Museum, where it still exists in cabinets down there. And over the years, we've had several visits down to the Milwaukee Public Museum to see the birds that were collected by him at that time. He was a businessman, he was a legislator, he was a traveler. He and his brother, they picked up like 400 different birds and eggs for these things along the way. So, I mean, when you go back into this was in the mid to late 1800s. So he wasn't alive when when we had the club founded. That was in 1928. And by the counts that I have, this is our about 97th year right now.
Wow.
And it's been interesting because birding has changed in the manner. I'm trying to think of how to relate. In movie theaters, when I was a kid, you had ushers with uniforms and caps and white gloves. It was a whole different era. And when you had the Bird Club starting in the 20s and then coming through the ages, it was a different type of behavior and science, and people going out searching for the birds and trying to identify them. So members of like-minded people who were looking for the birds, there were a number of those people who would join together and have regular meetings, and somewhere in there the bird counts started, and different kinds of little field trips to all the locations around Waukesha. And one of the things when I was teaching was that Waukesha in 1972, when this happened, the Waukesha had the highest amount of pounds of milk per cow in the world. It was a dairy dairy county. It was huge. And now you can't swing a cat and get a cow anywhere anymore. So, I mean, it's something that just changed for habitat and behavior. And the people that went through the club, they had these places and the names of these places where they have from historical, and now they're parking lots, subdivisions, businesses, just a tremendous amount of change over the years. So the club has tried to keep itself going, and it's been very successful, but it was more serious and scientific oriented. You had to present as a member. You would have a meeting, let's say the September meeting, and okay, Derek, we'd like you to talk about pick a bird and explain its background and tell us about it at the meeting. You'd be assigned some type of research, and that was the way that the bird club sort of developed itself over that period of time. As the times went on, it was a group that met oftentimes in church basements, and then about 10 plus years ago, we moved over to the Retzer Nature Center. We've had a nice ongoing relationship with the Waukesha County and the naturalists that have existed over there. And with that, the club has been able to have a number of programs. We have a season that starts in September and goes through May. So we have usually 7 topics that come up during that period of time, and we get speakers or presentations from either people around the state or our members themselves. We have several humbly bragging expert birders in the club, and they can make a presentation that's excellent. And on the other hand, we have gained access to a number of people around the state who, until this adventure of Zoom started, we would often have people drive down from some distant location in the state and maybe even stay overnight to give us a talk on a topic. So the animus for the club's improvement has been partially because we've had this nice location with Retzer, which is partnered with us in having the public attend any of the meetings that we have or any of the field trips. One type of field trip that we have that's at Retzer from April through June is the Friday bird walk. And so we meet at 7 in the morning there, and we start at the parking lot, and we take a lap around the majority of the property. And anybody is welcome to join in on this hike, from club members to the public coming. We have people that like to come from anywhere in the county or from in Milwaukee or Oconomowoc or Madison every now and then. But we'll have people attending there, and it's not surprising to have 15 to 25 people coming for a bird walk in the morning, and it's just for the Retzer Center. But the club has been nicely expanding because we've got members that are just nicely willing to share. As you guys said earlier, we have some members that take other people under their wing, and they share the kinds of information, simplistic as it may be up there. What's that? Yeah, that's a robin. Okay, yeah, big deal. It's a robin. No, it's a nice deal because people who haven't got a lot of experience, it becomes a revelation to them and an excitement, and we're happy to feed that. So, like I say, the club has been doing nicely with what we've been getting as far as speakers and programs, and we're looking forward to a 100th anniversary in the next 3 years. And maybe you guys will be our guest speakers.
I would be honored
Maybe.
if we were the
Yeah.
guest speakers. I think that for the 100th year, you have to do the Kalima Warbler hike in Texas as a
Oh.
celebratory gesture.
Yes. We have a bus already chartered.
We can build a tram up there. It'll be
Yes.
an honorary tram, so no one has to make the hike anymore. You just get shuttled up.
One of the funny things that people have, I've had the opportunity with these Friday walks or field trips or going out at times and talking to a group at the library or group at somebody's club or uh, social group that they have. They say, they have somebody could talk about birds for a few minutes. And I've been able to do that, but uh, I can't help but speak to you without reiterating the story you may already know is one of the people that when I started the bird club, I came under his wing was what we call Bob Adams, and he was a scout leader and a factory worker for years, and he I think he was close to his late 70s or so when I met him, and I would go out hiking with him. He'd say, "You want to go birding?" and he would take me along, and then he'd turn to this kid and he'd go, "Come on, McDuff, keep up." It was just a man was just a machine in walking. But one of the cute things that he would do is he was like our Yogi Berra. Yogi would go, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Well, Bob Adams would be asked by people, "Bob, where do you find birds?" Bob would be this sort of raspy voice and his spiked crew cut, and he'd go, "Well, birds are where you find them." And you just sort of scratch your head. But I think it was a year ago, just this month, that how did you know that birds are where you find flamingos?
Yeah.
There you are on the shore of Port Washington, and always just looking at how that conversation went with the gal that was walking her dogs and telling her husband on the phone, who was the birder, "Honey, there's 5 flamingos sitting on the beach." "Yeah, right, honey." And an hour later, there were hundreds of people there.
Yeah, that was a wild scene.
That was, I mean, that was a strange year. What was the flame?
Colored
Colored
tanager.
Manager was there. The Limkins were coming around. Rosie Spoonbill was up there in Green Bay. It was a year.
It was.
Everything south came north.
Yeah, not so much this year.
No, we were talking about the Limkins recently because I remembered them being here earlier in the summer, but then looking at eBird, it seemed that it was late summer, September, but I haven't seen any reports of Limkins coming up lately.
I haven't heard a thing.
I'm hoping they come up still. That's exciting when they randomly show. I'm hoping we at least get one that we can go find. Maybe a Waukesha County one.
Coming up I don't know if they'll be going that direction much anymore, unless it's something unusual for weather.
Yeah,
But,
I should say popping up, I suppose. Hoping they
the
would
thing
pop
that
up.
was, I noticed, I think it was last year that somebody, either at Winthrop Harbor or Montrose Beach in Illinois, they had a purple gallinule. And the concept, I said, was, well, it didn't come from Illinois, most likely. It probably came at least through Wisconsin, if not in Wisconsin. But
Yeah.
it managed to not be seen for whatever period it was moving. So I always wonder, what do we miss?
I'm sure
Yeah,
we
you
missed
wondered
tons of
too.
stuff.
A lot of this stuff travels by night, so no one most likely even sees it going, and then it just sort of appears in a place. Because we've had
Yep.
a purple gallinule since I've been birding in Wisconsin, and you just wonder how that shows up there. How did the flame-colored tanager get so off course that a bird that's supposed to be in Mexico ended up in Wisconsin?
Why
I've
is the
never really
sky
known.
blue? How deep is the ocean?
We could probably find scientific answers to that. It does seem that nobody really knows how birds work. They can
Right?
kind of explain it, but no one truly understands the mechanisms that drive them to do what they do.
Well,
But
the vagrant birds, sure. I think they're getting a better handle on migration and things, but as far as those vagrant birds popping up, it's hard to say.
if I may digress, this is also starting to be chimney swift time.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
hoping to have some views of chimneys around the area where we can see a good migrating roosting population come through. We have had over the last 6-7 years birds up to 3,000 to 4,000 going in a single chimney at one time. But again, the mystery, these birds migrate down to Peru and other countries down in South America. And again, the travel GPS that these birds have in order to find their way down there. On top of it, what brings them to some of these singular chimneys that we have in mass like that? Do they communicate to each other? Do they have, is it Boolean that they can dot dot dash or something in some way, shape, or configuration that tells the other birds? Are they like an elephant? They stamp on the ground, and 100 miles away, the elephant can hear that. It's just phenomenal that these birds have this ability to migrate. And what's a little oddity that I like is that a lot of times the adults leave before the kids do to migrate. And who taught the kids the song, the rote? I'm digressing.
Well, it's a good digression because it's one of the coolest spectacles in the North American bird world, I would say. And if anybody hasn't seen the chimney swifts as they cloud around the chimney, I would recommend trying to find a place that's hosting. They call it a Swift night out, usually in Wisconsin. Now it sounds like it's just a time to listen to Taylor Swift music, but I think they're still going to call it a Swift night out. Don't be fooled. It's not. It has nothing to do with Taylor Swift, but it's really cool because they start to gather in small numbers and they start to swirl. And then it looks like a cyclone as more and more come in, and then you just see them suddenly start going right into the chimney. So that cyclone just goes into the chimney and then they all start to funnel in. I remember we did one a few years ago where you were hosting it and I was there, and we used the night vision to see them go in the chimney as well. So could not only see it during the day, but then even when it got dark, you could see them going in. That'd be a cool thermal one to do too, Derek.
That would be, yeah.
Were you there when we let the kids go?
What does that mean?
With we had the baby swifts.
No, I would have
Oh,
loved
that sounds
I
so
wasn't there for
cool.
that.
Wildlife in Need had obtained like 5 or 6 chimney swifts that had fallen out of their nest because a lot of times their nests are made out of sticks, which are held together with saliva. It was like glue for the sticks. However, if it gets too wet, it washes away and the nest can collapse and the babies would come down inside the chimney. There's no way to stick them back up there for the parents. Like a robin, you could maybe put a bird back in the nest. But these went to the Wildlife in Need group, and with their excellent volunteers that they have and staff over there, they raised them past fledging into adult teenagers. So they brought them over, and they opened the door, and up into that swirl that you're talking about, they vanished into the swirl because, to the best of my knowledge, I can't tell a male, a female, a first year, a second year, or they just look like swifts once they're up in the air.
I like to think some Wildlife in Need was looking at one and was like, "There's Bobby. I
Yep.
see him."
There he is. Yeah, that's it's good to have humor about that because it's one of those mysteries that we have to laugh at this time.
Yeah, Spence, do you feel like before all the technology came, people enjoyed the experience more? Like they're more in the moment of just enjoying the bird they were looking at? Or do you feel like the technology's kind of enhanced the experience?
Well, I think that both periods, it was in the moment when they had happened at that time then, and now it's the new in the moment. A lot of times, there's a couple young men that I know that come out of high school and they're starting birding now. They will not have the exact experience of what it was like, 50 years ago. But the people who 50 years ago were doing it, when you go up to uh, Manitowoc, there's a gentleman up there, Charles Sontag, and that guy was a member of the Ben Goss Bird Club back 60 years plus ago or more. And he is that type of emblematic of what birding was like back then as being an expert birder, and yet continues it today, and brings the scope along and identifies things. And what's sort of fun, I can do it a little bit, and you guys are really doing it great with this podcasts and other aspects, is that you're sharing the knowledge and the joy and lighting a spark. The spark birds, and many times, that somebody gets all of a sudden they see something. Uh, can you help me? Let's see, is it the Wanakia Refuge Rehabilitation area over by Richmond, Wisconsin? And they brought 7 education birds to the Retzer Nature Center for a bird club meeting last year. And so they took out first they started with a crow, and that thing was smarter than a whip. And they put out a female red-tailed hawk, then a great horned owl, then a male red-tailed hawk, then a screech owl, then a long-eared owl, and finally the saw-whet owl. And people got to see those things, 5, 10, 15 feet away. They're just dropping their jaws. I mean, it's something to see one bird at a program like this, but to catch all those with their unique development of feathers and of coloring, calls, woo, that's just great.
Yeah. I feel like when people start using binoculars and looking at birds too, it's kind of a similar effect of that. As once, if you're looking at a warbler with the naked eye and you're not a birder, you're like, oh, it's a little bird over there. But when you get the binoculars on them, say you're with an experienced bird and they're like, hey, look at this. And you can actually see like the, yellows and burgundies on like a palm warbler and watch it flick its tail. Like it's so much more interesting when you're able to see those things up
Yeah.
close.
I think to me, the thing that always got me interested was the experience around seeing the bird. So the bird itself is really cool, but I always was very interested in what you had to do to get it. And I liked the more unique ones. So when you have to go to a landfill to see a bird, why else would you do that? Why else would you be going to a landfill? On another
fun.
one, I said
How to
sod
have
farm.
a good time.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the things that I said I wasn't going to do when I started birding was go to a landfill. And then it was very quickly after I stated that something rare showed up in a landfill.
He's been to
Yeah.
the most landfills of anyone in history.
I've been to a lot of landfills.
Yeah, the most checklists for landfills.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Devil's Lake is another one too. Seeing the Townsend solitaires up there. That was like our first big birding experience, I think, was having to hike up the bluff in winter.
You recall, were you with me there?
I wasn't, I don't think
I was.
so.
I think it was me and Bill.
Yeah, you and Bill carried me up the hill basically. It was like Donner Pass.
Oh geez.
We were going up the hill, and I was worried you were going to take a bite out of me along the way. We got there looking for the Townsends at that point, but that was all snow and ice going both ways. But going back, with the experiences, one of the things that I've had the pleasure of doing with a school group out at Camp Whitcomb is watching the osprey and the nest out there, and talking to the kids ahead of time, talking about birds, and then walking out to see the birds that are as up in the nest as much as possible, but putting telescopes on them, and they these wild young kids turn into, oh my, oh look at this, and next thing their parents are doing it. Holy cow, that's through a telescope? Oh Lord. And they want, how do you do that? Or that's what that is over, and all of a sudden it puts on a whole new when when it's just a little brown job, it's a bird down the road. That's what it is. But when you see it up close and you can tell somebody, see the way the feathers are on that, see its beak, take a look at that. A lot of these kids, is for this event, that's a real spark bird for them, is these osprey.
Do you remember what the spark bird was? Was there one in particular where it took it to the next level for you, being able to see it?
I think it was a trip I took out to Arizona when I was still not that far out of retirement, and again trying to get better in touch. And let's see, help me here. I'm tongue tied at the moment. The phenopeplia is one, and what's the other red one?
Pyrrholoxia.
Pyrrholoxia, and then the elegant trogon, and that was on one of these military bases that you have access to the canyon, but you're literally on a base there. You can't bring this, you can't bring that, you can't do this. No fishing, no recording, no bird calls. And again, Merlin didn't exist there. And I was hiking through this on my own, and I saw these people, and they said, "Oh, how you doing? What you looking for?" I said, "Oh, the elegant trogon." And they said, "You're looking for it?" And behind us, whack, 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 whack. He said, "That's it." I said, "That's it? That's what I've been listening to for this last hour and a half?" And until you have somebody be able to point the way, that's what you guys are out there doing. Thank you very much.
We do our best.
That's a cool story though. They do make some weird barking noises, I've heard.
Yeah, I mean it's just riffing right here. I got a couple calls from people this past month about the screaming outside their windows, and what I typically think that is most likely a great horned owl, immature teenager saying "bing," and the parents, maybe or maybe not, but the bird just keeps making this cry that would be good for a horror movie.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think those are barn owls too in this area, and they'll hear the young great horned owl screaming.
Or they'll think it's a banshee.
That's true. Yes,
You get reports all the time of banshees.
all the time. I see that. A lot of people are scared to go in certain woods because of yes.
I mean, I would honestly believe that if you heard that noise coming from woods and you didn't know what it was, I would.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Spence, is there a target on your list, like the next bird you really want to see? Do you have a specific one in mind?
No, I don't. What I would like to see, I have not ever taken or had the opportunity to go down to Florida, and maybe Cape Hatteras or some of the islands along there to see some of the waterfowl and shorebirds that are along there. But I have family in North Carolina, and they lived on the Wilmington Ocean area for North Carolina. And I got to see some birds down there, and that was just silly things, just ibises just walking all over the place. You just shake your head. That was I was thinking of earlier adventures I'd had in Montana, uh, just seeing the Eurasian widgeons all over the place there. I mean, there was this beautiful Lee Metcalf Wildlife Preserve there, and having a the not the bald eagle, the other eagle,
Golden Eagle.
golden eagle, was sitting there on a carcass next to the road, and 10, 15 feet away. It wasn't going to go, and it was just gorgeous sitting there. And I'm thinking, here people are looking all over for golden eagles in Wisconsin, and they're driving all over the state to see the Eurasian widgeons, and they're just sitting there. It was just special like that. But yeah, if I could get down to a couple more locations, that would be nice.
I was going to ask if there were any other birding memories that really stuck out to you as moments where you kind of just thought this is what the hobby is all about, the epitome of the hobby, kind of like the one you just told, actually.
I had going back to sort of not exactly in the banshee category. For you who are familiar with Vernon Marsh,
Mm-hmm.
I had gone out to look for long-eared owls in a tamarack area that exists out there, and it was probably February, March, and there was still slush all over the ground and the hummocks or the grasses that were out there. And I said, well, I'm going to walk around the tamaracks and come back on the other side. Well, I took a left by mistake when I got out there, and sky was cloudy, the sun was lowering behind the clouds. It was getting dark, it was getting colder, and my little Android phone had 1 or 2 bars left on it. I was at the point of saying, I don't know how I'm going to get back and how much further I can go before I have to try and say, somebody come and find me. And finally, I came around the back of one of the figure-8 dikes out there and saw a tree that I recognized for the eagles and used that as my North Star until I got to the path. But that was not an adventure I had completely enjoyed. I actually fell down and snapped the scope off during that one.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I said the epitome of what birding's all about, Spence.
Yes. The joy of the hunt.
Did you ever find the owls you were looking for in that instance?
Not that day.
Did you go back and find them?
I did.
Okay, good. At least the story has a happy ending. I'm
It
happy
does.
about that.
It does. Yeah. I don't worry about. There's not a lot of people that want to go back in that area. It's sort of a mess. And
Yeah, I don't even know what's back there anymore. I don't know. We
Banshee.
yeah, on Christmas bird counts, we tried to look in there, and it's the kind of situation where there's water flowing underneath the snow usually. So
Yep. Yeah. Those. Let's see. What else? I just trying to think. I wrote this. No, that was basically a couple ideas I'd thrown down. What's fun? What was really because I had been retired, the COVID period for driving around and looking at birds was wonderful. Gas prices were dirt cheap at that time, and people still reported birds around the state. And I had the opportunity and time to go and look for them, and that was a pleasant surprise. I was fortunate enough to be able to add over 300 birds to my list that year,
Wow.
or just
That's impressive.
just for the year.
It opened everything up for birding because it was one of the few things that people could go out and do still. So a lot of COVID birders then picked up the hobby, and I'm assuming a lot of them stuck with it. There was this one instance that we were at Horicon Marsh, and there was a guy who had just picked up birding, and what was it, black crowned night heron he was trying to find? And he got super excited because he found this black crowned night heron, and then he wanted to run and tell his significant other that was waiting at the end of Old Marsh Road. So you saw a lot of people digging into it like never before. And I wonder what the future of birding is. Is it something that's going to continue to increase? And if that does happen, can nature accommodate it? Because we already have issues with some birds now where you can't go and try to see them. The information's not public because it could be detrimental to the birds. I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, this is one that I wrestle with because there's so much of the glass half empty in this. The number of birds that have disappeared since the 70s or 50s or 60s, the species that are decreasing, the habitat that's decreasing, and I don't know, other than more of it occurring. A lot of times we go through an area and we haven't been there since last year, and here's a new factory, here's a new subdivision, here's a big change that's gone on. And like you say, the protection of some of these birds, it's we're having to figure out a balance between certain people that want to behave certain ways in the woods versus the birders that are there. Awkwardly, I had an experience at Paradise Valley where a hunter was out there and shot a short-eared owl.
Ooh.
And I don't think he meant to shoot a short-eared owl. I don't think he knew what it was. It was flushed and it was moving. And as far as he was, now that's not the onus of all hunters, but it does make it awkward because there are just times birds become a target, and that's an awkward proposition. On the other hand, a place like Paradise Valley, the habitat went from back at the early 1900s, 1930s, somewhere in that area. It went from being a marsh into a muck farm. And then they did all their harvesting of crops in there until around 2006 or 7. Basically, the land had given up its ability to grow things well, washed away by water and wind, and it was recaptured and put back into a marsh. It was sculpted a little bit to try and run the water back through it and make the marsh alongside with the canal river that exists there. But now when you go out there, they had difficulty managing the water valves that were there. They heaved in the frost of Wisconsin, or in some ways did not operate in the manner. They had to be replaced. And then the vegetation, because of the erratic water levels that were there, they lost control of the open water, and the vegetation is filled in, so that in many areas now there's 15 to close to 20-foot willow trees where there were none. So that'll be the people still will find trigger birds that are interesting. We'll still go out there, and hopefully there'll be a short-eared owl still coming to that location. But to see some of the downside of it doesn't warm the cockles of my heart. And I'd like to see it treated better. And um, being a little biased now at this part of my life, I'd like to see more clean access to some of these areas. At Vernon Marsh, you have the south end of Frog Alley where you go down to a boat launch. And the dike out there is nice gravel walking, and it's simple. On the figure eights, the walking out there is unique because it's rutted, it's got muskrat holes, it's got ditches, it's got overgrowth. Now, I think that's a handicap hazard, and I, I'm frustrated for my peeps of this age who can't walk as well. We're sort of pushed out of that region. I'm not looking for great protests or anything, but I think that just the simplicity of making a smooth pathway. Uh, it doesn't sound hard to me, but that's as far as we get. So
Yeah. I think in some places they're taking that into account more because we were at McGee Marsh in Ohio and they do a pretty good job of like having the boardwalk really accessible for people in wheelchairs and making it so kind of everyone can get on that place, and that they're doing a good job with trying to manage the feral cats out there and stuff. So I feel like it really is dependent on the place of how much time they're kind of putting into accessibility, but I think it's becoming into the forefront more.
That Vernon Marsh Trail is arguably inaccessible to people that have absolutely no issue walking too.
You can just fall in a hole really easily.
There's holes out there. Sometimes I remember in the past that the grasses on the trail get so long that you literally have to stand up and almost step over some of the grasses to go. And then you're just in habitat basically. So
preach to the choir.
Yeah, it's positive and negative because to a degree, the barrier of entry for people that don't care enough to go see something out there, that stops them, but it also stops people that do care enough but don't have the physical ability to do so. So, the person that wants to take really easy photographs of a bird up close may not want to go through that to do it, may want to go to a park instead. So, it's kind of, and then like we opened with the hikes, like the Kalima Warbler hike, that there's probably no way to make easier for anybody to do. So I don't know. I would just like to see everybody out there respecting nature, which I am afraid that the more people go out there, the more people you'll have that just want the photo and then don't care about the rest of it, or just want the tick on the stat sheet and don't care about the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that whoever comes into the hobby as a newer person does it because they love nature and not just because it's a trendy hobby that they want to say they do.
I think that's where kind of the mentorship comes into, because if they encounter people that are respectful, hopefully they'll adopt some of that. But if they encounter people who are disrespectful, I think then that'll kind of be maintained moving forward. So in birding especially, I feel like you need good mentors, or it helps to have good mentors.
That is a truism. I'd like to see some better way of bringing a birder to a school and having them answer questions for the kids, or in some way, shape, or form. You can't always bring animal rescues or education animals to a school. They do that, but I'd like to see it be more involved in figuring out how to do that. Again, lighting the spark when you can with some of these things.
Yeah. Here's another interesting question for you is, what do you see happening with bird clubs in the future? Do you think that they're going to continue to persist for another 100 years? Or do you think they're going to get overtaken by sort of the bird club of the internet, the Facebook groups and the telegrams and things like that? Do you think that there's always a strong positive to continuing that in-person atmosphere and camaraderie?
Dystopia versus utopia. I think that as long as we keep finding people who have the heart that we have with the members in the bird club, it's kindness, it's being supportive, it's being educational, being helpful. And there's so many of the people that participate. And a lot of times the people in the bird club, it's sort of an evolution. And yet, as they get towards the later years, they're still coming, but there's new people coming in, and that's the transition and the baton that gets handed off to the next generation. So I don't know about the 100-year thing, because I can't imagine 100 years from now what the state of Wisconsin will physically look like. We have the idea that people want to have bird cities. They want to, have some sort of status as a bird community. When in certain ways, it's sort of, you put all these things up that have interfered with the birds. How do you bring the birds back? Well, it's a little bit awkward how to bring it back. It's sort of preserving. If Retzer continues to exist like it is right now, the habitat there provides an annual ability to attract. So those areas of parks and recreation areas and property by rivers and streams and conservancies, that's what will help to continue to promote. And if you have a group of like-minded people who have the ability to do a little sharing, I think it'll continue to grow, or keep continuing, maybe not to now from one member to 1,000, but just to have the consistency of having enough people like-minded people.
Yeah, and I think Ritzer's done a great job of collecting more land over time and expanding and preserving. And I would hope that in 100 years they'd be able to collect even more land. Like I'd love to see Retzer grow even more, because that housing has just crawled into that area next to Retzer. I remember on the road driving in, we would always find like woolly bears crossing and snakes and stuff, and now it's all houses. So we don't really see a lot of that. So I'd love to see, or to think that in 100 years, like Retzer could grow, or we'd have even more protected lands and less housing.
It's a good thought.
Yeah,
Like to do
yeah.
it. I'll come over and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, he's like, let's make it happen.
For sure. Well, Spence, anything else about, the birding community here? Actually, do you have any advice for those young birders just starting out? What would you tell them?
Well, it's like any endeavor that you have. Practice, practice, practice. The more that you get out and see some of that, the sparks, I think, continue to increase. And that's what I see in several of the younger birders, including yourselves. The more that you have gotten into it, the more you become, well, not isolated, but actually incorporating more and more people around you to feel what you feel. So for a young birder, you need to. What's one of the things that I miss is that my model used to have a CD player in it, and I would have the bird calls from that fellow from Madison that made black cap chickadee, cheeseburger, cheeseburger, and they would make the sounds and play the word phrases for them. And that's not easy to replace right now even with all the technology we have. There was a number of the bird club people worked at some of the bird stores in the area. They would play that tape in the background all day long, and by the time they walked out of there, they could name 200 birds in their calls. So how do you get that repetition? Some way, again, you have to have the spark. Uh, get enough optics, get enough understanding of how to do photography, and then get out and experiment with it.
Yeah. We do some of the song and call stuff on YouTube, but I imagine having a CD would have been really nice. My car is like 20 years old, so I have a CD player in it, but yeah, on the newer stuff, they need a Spotify playlist that's just the same thing or something you can hook up.
When Bill and I would go birding together, that's always the CD that would be in. So we would just listen to all the bird songs on repeat over and over.
There's times where I listen, I've got to be doing something, and I put this spa music on, and it has the sounds of birds and nature. And in the background, I'm going, oh, that's the great tit. And I'm going, it's a British soundtrack, but I'm getting the introduced bird over here that we've got making its call from that it was introduced from over in Europe. And just a silly little idiom.
Yeah, it's interesting what you notice then once you know, because you'll be watching like a horror film and you'll hear like a common loon. Like, what's that doing in there?
Well, yeah. You know, and they'll play it during the daytime in Central Park, and I'm sure there may have been a loon that landed there, but that's one some of the best adventures I've had with my friends birding have been winter mornings right after a heavy snowfall, or even times during it, because where the plow goes through and opens up the gravel, the birds flood in there to eat the little stones and get some seed if possible. If no cars are out, people think you're nuts, and I'm thinking, this is gorgeous.
I think that knowing the bird calls thing is a blessing and a curse, because it's great to be able to know what it is, but then when you do hear it in a place that doesn't belong in media, you're just like, oh, they didn't do the research.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's supposed to, besides trying to think of loons, owls, some other birds that are chirping that they put into the wrong segments. I was in Brookfield Square, and one of them was playing Chuck Will's Widow in the back of this serene music. Nice to hear. Nice to hear it back in the area again. But
we had one for a while. Came to the same spot every year.
Yep, there on Young Road.
Yep. I wish it would come back. That and the Kettle Moraine Prairie Warbler.
They always put the red-tailed hawk over the bald eagle when they show it.
Or anything. Turkey vulture, different kind of hawk.
Yeah,
I also really like to use eagle owl whenever they do, not the song, but just the actual bird. Whenever they have an owl in a show, a lot of times it's either a tawny owl or an eagle owl.
We'll have to write our producers. And
I agree.
No birds were harmed in this movie.
Well, cool. Anything else, Spence, that you want to add?
No, been a pleasure to have a conversation with you at all. You guys are both just excellent ambassadors for the community, for your county and city here. And I appreciate the effort that you're making, as well as that you had a difficulty finding somebody, so you called me for a talk. So
hey, we've been talking about having you on ever since we started the podcast, Spence. That is a bold-faced lie you just told.
You're putting me on. Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, thanks, Spence. We appreciate, your guidance and being a force in the Waukesha birding community. So really appreciate all that and your time. And thanks to everyone for watching and listening to this episode of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.